I asked some FPL experts for their advice, and here are some of their top tips. First up, we've got a piece of advice from Skyflyer on Twitter, and he says, stick to the plan that you decide early on and avoid making transfers based on one good or one bad game week, especially at the start of the season. And I completely agree with this one. There are examples of players in the past that have started off seasons really well. You know, the first 1, 2, 3 game weeks, they might have even scored 3 or 4 goals during that period, and then they just completely drop off from that point. And also, having players that don't necessarily get off to a strong start as well, you know, maybe missing the first couple of game weeks, not scoring, then transferring them out. You just know, certainly with me, sod's law is they're going to score straight after you take them out of your team. And ultimately, you waste a transfer anyway because, you know, well, certainly with, I think, the 6.5 million mids this season, the likes of Mbumo, Eze and Mitoma, you can keep chopping and changing between them. But ultimately, you're probably going to miss returns and waste transfers. There are going to be weeks, obviously, when the likes of Mbumo, Eze and Mitoma don't score. And it's important to just sit on your hands in these situations, or at least ride out the urge to transfer them out and feel, you maybe come back to it the next day, have a sleep on it, whatever. Come back the next day and revise your team then when you've had some time to think about it, rather than being rash and making those quick transfers. The next piece of advice comes from my friends Notto Template and FF Bobby. They both say essentially to pick a solid team to start the season, and to be honest, I completely agree with this one. Whilst, you know, being differential is good, I personally prefer to be differential towards the end of the season when, you know, you've accumulated a good amount of points and you've got yourself a good rank. You then use your differentials to get yourself an even better rank. And usually I like to do that before, you know, towards the end of the season when we know the players that are likely to score. At the start of the season, usually just not enough is known, and especially about new signings. Like if you start your team full of new signings, unproven players, compared to the template, which is full of largely proven and solid assets, and they don't do very well, I mean, the chances of them doing well compared to, well, beating the template to not is very small anyway. But you can put yourself out of the running straight away. Now, of course, you can't win FPL in game week 1 or game week 2, but you can certainly put yourself out of the running to do so. You can end up, you know, with a massively differential team, 40, 50, 60 points behind the running, and that's almost impossible to make up, given, you know, the template's the template for a reason usually because they're solid players that are going to score points. And for me, I like to pick tried and trusted players at the start of the season. Next up is one around consuming content, and this is a little notification if you're enjoying the video so far to subscribe to the Golden Goal YouTube channel. I've got plenty more content coming out before the start of the season, and then every game week of the season I'll have 2 or 3 videos coming up. So if you enjoy what you're watching so far, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe. There are, you know, you're watching this video because you watch FPL YouTube, right? I'm probably not the first content creator or YouTuber you've come across in FPL. I can't name all of them because there's just so many, but you will know who the good FPL YouTubers are. Please consume their content, obviously, as well as mine, but I'm advertising, you know, the rest of them as well. Please consume their content because it really is a great way to learn about the game. And I don't know about you, but most of my mates aren't interested in fantasy football, so I can't really talk FPL with them. So it's nice to have a bunch of content creators, and you know, most of them, like me, will respond to comments or have some conversation on Twitter and stuff. It's just good to bounce ideas back and forth with them, and just to listen to what, you know, some of the content creators have got fantastic ranks, probably better than me. The likes of, well, I'm going to name drop him, FPL Harry, probably got the best track record of any content creator I've seen. If you listen to his, you know, content and his picks, you're not going to do badly. So yeah, listening to podcasts, YouTube, seeing people on Twitter, etc., it's a great way to learn about the game. Next up then, we've got a point from FPL Prem Tipster, and he's talking about ownership and the fact that ownership is not related to points. Now, it is sort of there's like a triad, right? I'm going to try and draw a triangle with my hands. There's like a triad of interlinked things, right? So at the top of the triad, you've got, I don't know, players scoring points. Bottom left of the triad, you've got ownership, and then on the right, you've got rank, basically. So if you're picking unpopular players that score really highly, your rank goes up, and if you pick popular players that score highly, your rank stays the same, and if you're picking unpopular players that don't score well, your points go down. So it does have a relationship in terms of rank, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't equal points. So if there's a really, really popular player that you personally don't believe is going to score well, that's absolutely fine, and you can ignore that ownership and go for a player that that, you know, is going to, you think at least, is going to score you points. You know, the game's all about playing it your own way, and that links onto a point I've got later on. But ultimately, you know, ownership shouldn't really be factored into your decisions with picking players. You know, you should do your own research, pick the players you like the look of, and don't really look at ownership, because whilst it might affect your rank, ultimately what you want in FPL is points. And if you believe a player with high ownership is going to score not many points, then don't go for them. And if there's a player that's got low ownership that you think is going to score well, then pick them. Don't worry about it. Next up, we've got one on captaincy. A couple of slightly different opinions, but they all come round to captaincy. And I think the general point is not to get too fancy with your captains, and recognise that you score a lot of your points throughout a season through your captaincy. It might be only, you know, 2 times points for one player, but it's 2 times points for the best player in your team on a given game week. So Yeti says, don't get fancy, captain Haaland. I actually like the thought of captaining Salah in game week 2 this season. Salah's got Bournemouth at home and Haaland's got Newcastle at home. Now, for me, the fixtures there sort of suggest Salah could be a stronger captain. Now, realistically, though, I wouldn't really put my armband away from the tried and trusted good players. You know, if Man United have a double game week, for example, Bruno, Rashford, perfectly decent captains. Salah's usually an alternative to Haaland if you want to go there. And obviously Haaland, most weeks, is probably going to be the strongest captain. And you've really got to bear in mind that your captaincy is where you get the most points from. So you don't have to, you know, you can go different from the standards, you know, popular captain. But what we shouldn't do is pick a player that's not got a good track record of points. You know, if you're going to use that captaincy armband, you need to use it on someone that's proven and will score you points. And then finally, FPL useless, and that's one thing I definitely tried to do with FPL, making these videos, going live and talking to you guys. It's just having fun. I mean, ultimately it's a game. Some people take it quite seriously, which I totally understand, but it's supposed to be fun, and people need to remember that. Exactly what he says. Too many people get angry and upset when it doesn't go their way. It's ultimately, right, if you have a terrible game week, that's going to slightly impact your mood, but the ultimate thing is to have something else going on in your life that you can turn to enjoy alongside FPL, like, I don't know, having a sport to play, going to the gym, or just going to see friends, something like that. Just something to take your mind off of FPL, because, you know, it's all great to say that FPL doesn't affect your mood and mental health. Sometimes, you know, you can have a really bad game week and it does make you a little bit angry. That's absolutely fine for that to happen. But the important thing is to recognise that, realise it's only a game, put it behind you and do something else to take your mind off of it. And maybe come back to FPL a couple of days later when things have cooled down. You can think clearly about the next game week. But yeah, just remember, you know, it's a game and you're meant to have fun. And that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that. Quite a well-rounded set of advices there, I think, and top tips. If you enjoyed it, please leave me a like rating on the video. Let me know if you have any tips in the comments as well. And subscribe to the Golden Goal channel, which should be just there, to see some more videos. And I'll catch you in the next one.